Thank you for joining me today. I'm eager to think with you about how the world works. Today we began a periodic series of interviews with innovative leaders from around the globe. In these episodes, we will convene conversations with leaders about the changing face of leadership in an interconnected world. We will examine the pitfalls, the priorities, the parameters, and the pragmatism of being a leader in the global community. Today's guest is Asaf Ron. Asaf is director of Beit HaGafen, which is an Arab Jewish cultural center in Haifa, Israel. In this capacity, Asaf is responsible for directing initiatives for coexistent life in Haifa, together with the municipal council, the mayor, and community leaders. Beit HaGafen is a nonprofit Jewish Arab organization founded in Haifa in 1963. Its two main goals are to develop relationships and strengthen multicultural ties between different cultural and ethnic groups in Israel. The platform for this initiative is art. Through its galleries, theater halls, music, theater companies, libraries, youth centers, and visitor centers, it reaches out to a group with varied cultural identities, nurturing the value of respect of people and striving to promote acceptance and diversity. Asaf, welcome to the program. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be. It's an honor for me to be on your program and have a chance to speak about our place.
Well, the initiative is very interesting for some of us. I would say that most of us recognize sort of this fascination with diversity around the world. And I can think of really not very many countries at all that there isn't an active discussion around the topic. Now, the intriguing part of that for some of us is not the diversity itself, but how we handle the diversity and how we think about it. So you, for the last decade or so, maybe more than that, have been really involved in this idea of initiatives that strive to find common ground and safe places where people can connect and where they can relate together. So Asaf, we would be really interested in finding out how you got to this place. Something about your story. Share a little bit with us about the story of how you got here and where your current passion is.
Okay, so I may say that personally I'm involved in this over 40 some years because I'm starting my career with the informal education in Israel, which I think is very strong comparing to the States and anywhere in the world. Informal education is very strong in Israel, which means we do a lot of informal activities with youth and young adults to let them develop their skills. And I started in the Scouts in Israel, which is very different than the States. But I can tell you that 1 year or 2 years between the age of 16 to 18, I think changed my life, which when I was taking the role of a counselor of a group I was 16 to 18 in this 2 years, and I was in charge of a group of teenagers. They were going from 14 to 16. And the sense and emotion of having the ability to empower and change and be in charge. And I saw the influence I have as a young adult on teenagers. It was amazing. And since then, I'm in this business. In my first years after the university, I was working for youth movement in Israel. And then I was developing institute dealing with interpersonal communication and leadership skills. With a female partner, we established an institute. I was like a freelancer for 12 years, dealing with societies in change, like the kibbutzim in Israel, who went from full common life to some privatization. I was working with leadership in the army and with municipalities, education departments, with schools. So it's just my course of life. And I was lucky enough 10 years ago to apply to the opening of this institute, Beta Geffen, the Arab Jewish Cultural Center, and won the call. And since then I'm there.
That's very interesting, very interesting. And so, tell us a little bit about Beta Geffen and what it's doing in the community and in Israel.
Beta Geffen is the first, I would say, the first community center, which now is a cultural center, but it was established as a classic community center 55 years ago. And you have to understand, it was 1963. Jewish and Arabs hadn't got the best relationship over there. Not today, you may say, but over then it was definitely one above the other. Today, the power is different. Maybe people are today feeling discriminated a little bit if you are Arab or in Israel, but still you can speak out and you feel you can fight for your identity. Back then, Arabs were not even full equal citizens in Israel. And the city of Haifa found it important to establish this kind of center. So the first 45 years, the center was dealing with informal education, cooking courses and soccer and judo and anything you can do together. And people just came and did it. But time changes, and we had to, when I came in role, we saw that the place was not giving the right answer for these times. And so we called ourselves a cultural center. So we're applying not only the nearest neighborhood of Haifa, but also of the city of Haifa and all over Israel. And we try to connect people. What we can do, and this is my understanding and feeling, is we cannot bring peace. We cannot sign contracts with other states, but we definitely have to bring people together, because everything starts and ends with trust and with a sense of understanding that the world, as you said before, is not one story, is multi-story society. And what we are doing in Beta Geffen through art and through culture is really exposing all the stories in the reality of Israel, that people are afraid of each other's story. And this is not an easy task, but we are doing our best. So I may say, if you ask me what my passion is today with Beta Geffen, is to have as many people as I can to just listen to the stories of the other. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to agree about politics. I don't want to change your mind about your vote today in the polls. Maybe personally I won't, but not as an institute. But I do want you to understand that you cannot live in a feeling that you have the only story and the only true story. You may say my story is true, I am right, but you have to understand there are more stories. And you know what? You have to understand that your story can be right and the other story can be right too. And it's hard, but that's the truth. And this is our mission statement.
Well, that's I hear a bit of passion in there, and that is very admirable. I believe that this thinking that drives that emotion really brings about very productive behavior if you do it critically, if you spend time doing the thinking. That's the sign of a sort of a driven leader, and I hear that. Yeah, a driven leader is always trying to position toward performance, effectiveness, and efficiency. And you'd like to think it's as easy as putting a shekel in the slot and pulling the lever and everything works. But, reality shows us that that's not exactly what happens. So what have you found to be some of your biggest barriers, some of your biggest challenges in your leadership?
In my leadership or in the situation? So
Well, I think it might be one and the same, but we'll talk a little bit about your qualities of leadership and what you've learned over the years. So if you would wish, you can apply this question to both,
okay.
and just tell us what you're thinking.
Okay. So the most external input, which is a great barrier and challenge for a leadership in this mission statement, is the kind of society we are living in. And I think it's not only in Israel. Everywhere there is a tension between ethnic groups. It's kind of dialogue of depth. Okay, people are not listening, just not listening. They may hear the words, but they are definitely not listening. Now, how do you change it? What kind of leadership can you offer to have people listen? And that's a great challenge. I don't know the best answer, but what I have learned with the years, it's first is understand, is be humble. Be humble. Understand what you can do and what you can do. That's what I'm saying. When group is coming to us, I'm telling them first, please understand, I'm not trying to change your set of mind. It's not my world. I don't want to go out of here with different perceive or understanding of the conflict. I want you just to try to understand that this is more than your story. So this is the biggest challenge I have. And the skills I'm using is, first of all, listening. If I want people to listen, I have to listen. The best leadership is modeling. And if I'm talking more than them, they won't listen. So, for example, we are training all our staff and counselors and guides and facilitators to listen, to have more questions and answers. And we're telling the people, we're telling the groups, we can't give you answers, but we want you to go out with more questions. Because what is pluralism? How do you become pluralistic? First of all, you have to be curious. And a curious person asks questions. So we wanted to go home to ask more questions. And this is a skill we try to use. And it's hard because especially if you're passionate about it, you want to talk. You want to give your speech. And it's very hard. I've learned it through the years. I know I'm becoming better and better every day, but it's always hard. I always make mistakes. Sometimes you must remind yourself all the time, listen, listen, listen. And but then, of course, you have to bring facts. You have to bring the stories in not threatening way. And so another thing I learned with facilitating dialogue in a conflict is never speak only about one story. So even if I want to take Jewish people, and let them know better the Arab story, and I'll never only put on the table the Arab story. We'll always have the two stories because they won't listen. Because the only one story, especially in a conflict, it's not a regular ethnic group, conflict in New York. It's like people are living in Israel in a feeling of life or death. And the story must be on the table. That's another thing I've learned.
And that's some really interesting concepts here, Asaf, that I think sort of need to be highlighted. This idea of listening. The academic world of leadership talks all the time about the importance of the story, the importance of listening. I might suggest that the whole area of cultural sensitivity has a lot to do with listening, and that that is probably not as common a trait in today's world as I would like it to be. But the role of the leader in that is really to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn, because the world changes so quickly that what we really need is sort of that safe place where our story can be heard, and we can listen and relearn new stories. And when we relearn new stories, then our story changes.
That's true.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so these are, I'm hearing here some of the lessons that you've gotten over the year. In your, you mentioned a little bit about sort of your leadership style and sort of those life has a tendency to teach us lessons whether we want to or not. And what have you have sort of an underlying approach when you come into your leadership, when you come into these kinds of problems, or how do you is it into the breach I charge, or do you have some underlying strategies that you like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Speaking about encounters between cultures, we are definitely we have few lines that are going together side by side. First of all, the contact theory. We believe people must meet each other in order to reduce stereotypes and barriers and fear. Now, we know it's not enough. We know the conflict theory is not enough. It's not enough just to sit together in a room. You have to do more than that. So we are working also, our theory of change is a narrative approach, which is an approach that try to understand or believe that your world or identity is built up from many stories, and the way you tell it to yourself. And that's what's happening in Israel, because we tell the story to ourselves very biased, because of fear, because of history of the top people. But I'm not blaming. It's one more thing I learned in my leadership: never blame. Never blame people for being for being afraid. Never blame people for being victims. Never blame people for remember too much our victims. Try to do it in other way, by bypasses. Just have them get the skills to look on, to widen their angle, and not be stuck on the hard part. Because what happens with the narrative approach, that we are stuck on the dominant narratives, which in our case, for Jews, is the Holocaust, of course, and for Arabs is what they call the Nakba, the 48 war. And how can you reconcile when you are always speaking about these two events, which are, of course, hard to encounter, and how to make concessions, okay? So we are developing the side stories, the stories about families, culture, common stories, and give people space to feel safe together. And we saw the miracle. The miracle is that after a couple of months, they are open up to listen to the hard stories and to debate and to dialogue. Again, I want to emphasize it. They won't usually change their political minds, but they respect the story of the other. And if you ask me, in the long term, and so only long term in this case, it influences, it changes the people. So this is one. And the third one is also we are working by the intercultural approach, which means there's an approach that sees the world today as a very mixed, neighborhood-wide. It's not multicultural like Canada or Switzerland. It's not like you speak French until this line and English from that line. No, in Haifa you speak Arabic and Hebrew and Russian and Amharic in the same street. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So we are developing this, we are training people for multicultural competence or cultural competence, just to understand the basics of the different cultures that live in Haifa, so they won't be afraid of seeing something they don't know, and respect it. So if I summary it, one more sentence. So we do bottom up. We work with youth. We work with the groups of encounter, with a group of contact theory. Meeting each other speaks about everything. But we also train teachers. We also train municipal clergy. We also train policemen or hospital nurses to understand the different cultures they are working with, which is the top down.
This is very good stuff. There are a lot of different views in the world when it comes to relating to different stories, different cultures. We have a tendency to hear a lot about the rhetoric, because the media is diligent in making sure that they are making their money in the world that they are. So there is a lot yet to be done.
Yeah.
Even with these excellent principles and initiative that you and others like you are practicing around the world, that model has really shown excellent results. They may not be immediate, but over the long term, I think these are the kinds of things that actually do change the world. Okay, so I'm going to ask you.
I believe.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, um, what does the future hold? What do you have left to do? What's your objective as you go forward?
It's a hard question. Well, it's a lot to do. I have to get people ready for the time that we'll have the brave, smart, and courage politician who will sign peace treaties in the Middle East. That's in Israel. I'm speaking Israel now. It's true in Paris. It's true in Harlem. It's true in probably other places, California, but not in the same story, but different ethnic groups. In our place, it's about wars. It's about really people losing lives, but people are unfortunately around us are educated with hatred. Okay, in some countries more, in some countries less. I don't want just to count names or whatever. And I believe in my society, Israel, most of us at least, are not educating for hatred, but we don't do enough to get people to know the other story so they won't have this stereotype and fear that is developed for 70 years already. So my role is with Better Geffen is to have as many people as I can, first of all, encounter with each other. Second, open their minds and through our art and exhibitions and plays and whatever we are doing and workshops, go home with more questions and a little bit, we do a little bit crack in your belief. So you want to learn a little bit more, to widen your angle of looking at society and your neighbors. That's what I want to do. And I want to reach out to as many people as I can. And of course, as an institute, I want to be in a place which we are every year becoming more and more, I think, famous in it over Europe too. That is like a center of knowledge to train people to do it in other places. Because it's not enough one building in one place to do it. And there are many skilled people all over who can do it. They just have to have some resources, have the passion, and decide to do it. So I'm trying to train more people to do it also.
That's very, very good. Not only a noble cause, but a very pragmatic cause. I think about the way that business works. Many people talk about the purpose of business being making money, but some of us would believe that the purpose of business is to create solutions for problems. And if you're lucky, then some of those solutions are replicable in other places. So what I hear from your narrative here is that figured out a solution, and the next step needs to be replicating that in other places. So we've talked. We've talked today, Asaf, about your approach to leadership, where you are, where your passions are, the challenges and realities and your leadership journey. Is there anything you'd like to add to the end of this? Any comments or summary you'd like to say, or speak a word to this next generation of leaders that's coming up, that whether we want to admit it or not, will at some point take our place?
Yeah, definitely. But I want to, from my experience, I would definitely advise, always be proactive. Never wait for things to happen. Always take risks. Be calculated, but always take risks. No risks, no development. And believe. Always believe. Always have a vision. Always think far away for something that sounds and looks and you think it's impossible. Because it's the only one that will change really the world, and we can do it. We can do it together. And always, I want to add it, always make partners and work together. Always cooperate. You can never do anything alone as best as you can do it with other people.
Very good, very good. My father would have told us that none of us is better than any of us, so you need to talk to everybody if you're ever going to get anything done.
I take it.
Well, thank you very much, Asaf, for your time with us and your openness and candid nature, talking about what you do and who you are. We very much appreciate the time that you've given us, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. If you are a leader or are just looking for solutions, JR Global Associates can help you strategize, analyze, implement, and evaluate to achieve positive results. Simply contact us by visiting jrglobal.co and get a head start on success.